A little bit of a nostalgia reel today. This is the Triton Speedmaster. It was very cool back in the day, or at least back in the 90s. You could cast a reasonable distance with it, but it was just so fast. So we're in autumn. Thoughts have turned really to catching some whiting and pouting for live bait. Well, you can see here where the tide's moving left to right. We've set up with a rod rest facing away from the wind. So we're going to be fishing 2 rods today, and we'll come on to the conditions in a minute. See what you might do on a day like today. We've got an easterly wind. I've just set the rods up at a slight angle to the wind, so I've got my back to the wind a little bit, punch into the wind for the casting. We've got the new incredibly average beach casting rod on the right, and then we've got a little bass rod that I'm matching with a multiplier, even though it's a fixed spool rod. We'll come on to why in a minute. I do love autumn for fishing. You can see that easterly's coming over our left shoulder as we face here on the south coast. I haven't fished exactly here before. I'm hoping this is a good spot for the bass, because as you can see it creates those choppy waves in very shallow water up against the shingle that we're looking at. So I'll be casting long for the whiting, hopefully a pouting, realistically a whiting, and we'll put one on for live bait for the bass. Not sure if you were watching us last week where we focused in on these plaice. We did quite well.
Well, plaice, another little whiting.
And I was really impressed with these worms actually. These are salted and oiled worms. Did anyone go ahead and try and do their own from the last week's episode? The ones we're using today have sat in the fridge for a week, and they're actually stiffened up a little bit in the cold, I think. But those oils, just really impressed with how we did last week. Let's see how we do this week. I'm using the Cascade rig as well, same one we used last week. The idea with this, if we want to cast a little bit further, it's quite a short rig, so we can cast it off these beaches with the high banks, and it can clip down as well to help the casting. There we go. First cast. So obviously, I think that's whiting on there. I think what we'll do, we'll let that develop. We've got 3 hooks on, and then I want to be ready to go. So all I've done is I've paired that Speedmaster with the wrong rod really. This is a bass rod, but I like a little multiplier when I'm fishing in close, and this has got a fast retrieve. I've just paired it with this old bass rod here. It's a bit of a hybrid system, but it'll work perfectly well for what we want it for. 20-pound main line, and the rig we're going to use for the live bait we've tied many times. A really simple rig, and it's my go-to setup for fishing in close, even with live bait. And that's this one here, which is also on the channel. So what I've done here is I've just angled the rods away from the wind, trying to create like a bit of a 90-degree between the line and the rod tip, just to notice the bites. That bass rod will just sit on the rod rest until we get a live bait for it. The wind's coming in here from the left to the right, and those waves pushing in front of us. Quite an interesting little fishing situation here really. You can see the bites have developed a little bit here. The problem you get with the whiting, of course, is they don't last as long as pouting, but they are still a very good live bait for bass and conger. I'm not too bothered about size. Decent, you know, even a 2 or 3 pound bass will eat probably eat a 2 or 3 pound whiting. But even if they're over a pound, I'm still going to put one on, I think. This one's perfect though. It's about 7 or 8 inches. Hooking into the mouth and back out. Very hard, bony fish, the whiting. So ideally, we would be holding the rod for the bass. I've got to try and do some filming for you today, so I can't do it brilliantly well. We'll try and keep it. I do like how this water's cutting across on this little sandbank here. Looks very bassy. And then it was a case of lots of whiting. Not hard to catch these at all. If you are coming down to the coast and you want an easy catch, whiting could be a good target. It can come a little bit bigger as well. You just have to keep that live bait going with a fresh fish every sort of half hour or so. Also sort of hoping for maybe 1 or 2 to eat today, but live bait is our main aim.
Oh, that's better. Good size whiting, still a bit small to eat though. Let's put this one back.
You can see there it's worth looking at the water to see what that's doing, and that should be pushing a lot of the food sources in towards our feet here as it gets shallower. No need to clip these on, trying to catch them close in, and that way they'll make for a fresher bait. And then typically, as has happened before on the channel, bass has come in and took that whiting and hooked itself and carried the rod off the rod rest, and of course I didn't have a chance to film it, but this was the result.
Oh, beauty, look at that. Beautiful. Look at that treble.
Well, there you go, that was the answer, just dropping it short with the live bait, and got a nice 3 3/4 pound bass. Well, just looking over this footage, I mixed it up a little bit earlier, and I think that was when a bass knocked the whiting off the hook, or at least the whiting made a run for it because the bass was coming. This was before we caught the bass at the end there, and I wonder whether that was bass taking it and it coming off the hook, because I retrieved in after this and there was no whiting on that treble, and that's all it takes. You're actually looking for something very, very subtle with this fishing at times. So you can click on here if you want to know how to tie that live bait rig, and thanks very much for watching.